And you're live.
Welcome to Talking in Stations, recorded live on Twitch, Saturdays, 1500 Universal Time. I'm your host, Matterall. This is a podcast about EVE Online, a sci-fi computer game played around the clock by people all over the world. Politics, sovereignty, trade, economics, and war have created years of a continuum of epic history, all created by the players themselves. Circle of Two is dead. The major alliance founded in 2008 was the home for more than 2,000 pilots. Their figurehead, GigX, has been banished from the game, their coffers emptied, their infrastructure given away to enemies. All the result of a heist planned and executed by the judge, CO2's own diplomat. But the judge did not act alone. He was aided by fellow CSM member Arif of Goonswarm. Goonswarm is plotted against CO2 for switching sides during the Casino War, a war where Goonswarm's coalition, the Imperium, was driven from their territory. Months later, they found a willing agent in the judge. A few weeks ago in Iceland, at the CSM summit, Arif and the judge plotted against CO2. When the plan was executed days ago, the judge broadcast the inner communications of the alliance to hundreds of viewers in real time. And GigX fell right into that trap and got himself banished by CCP from the game. In his final words, GigX told corporations of CO2, find new homes because CO2 was over. His followers, filled with emotion, cheered as he left. They were once considered the Spartans of the Imperium, but they now lie dead, poisoned by their father. How did this happen? Let's ask one of the masterminds, Arif. But first, if you would like to support the show, we'd greatly appreciate it. Follow, subscribes, and bits during the show. That's how you support a show. You apply during the show. And if you listen to the podcast, you can contribute through Patreon/Matterall. On behalf of the team, thank you for the continual support. All right, first up, our major guest is Arif of Goonswarm. How are you doing?
Great. I'm the smuggest person in the world.
I bet you are. We're going to get into why you're smug. First, I'm going to round out the introductions with our panel here, and we'll start with Dirk McGurk.
Hey, what's up? It's Dirk McGurk from Snickeredly and Pandemic Legion and co-host of the Open Com Show.
Carneros.
Good morning. Carnero, CEO of The Bastion.
Dunk.
I'm Dunk Dinko with Brave Newbies.
And we have a media panel that's going to be joining us, and we have Arendis.
Hi, I'm Arendis from Goonswarm Federation and Imperium News.
And we'll have, and I think that's actually will be it. And we're going to mostly focus on Arif, and if we can, we'll maybe get the judge in here a bit later. All right.
Yep.
So, actually, one more person is coming in at this moment, and that is Naiden. Say hi, Naiden. Okay, we'll get to Naiden in a minute.
Naiden from CZINN.
All right. Okay, so let's just go right back to the beginning, and as far back as you want, Arif, how did this get started?
Well, like I said in the Kotaku article, because they did a pretty good interview of us, and then it'll probably also be in the PC Gamer one, but I'll rehash it real quickly for the viewers. This essentially started when CO2 backstabbed us way back in the casino war. I didn't have a chance to participate at that time. My real life was super busy, so I barely got to, give some advice, maybe log in a couple times, but I basically couldn't play during those few months. So I got to watch this from the sidelines, the Great Betrayal, and it's kind of frustrating when you're, at a senior level and you don't really have a chance to do anything about it. So very early on during the CSM, it was kind of a personal fantasy mission, flip Judge, right? But not flip him in the way that we flipped him. Originally, I just wanted to try to build him up to do a coup. That was my original first plans. It just evolved later into a flip grab.
What was the original plan?
So originally, either A, we wanted to build Judge up to be the new GigX or Gigs. We felt like he was a more stable leader. He was a more strategic leader. He understood the value of diplomacy, where Giggs just burned everything down around him, right? He's the prototypical pigeon on the chessboard, right? Hmm. Well, we thought if we build him up enough internally, if we give him enough soft intel, if we give him enough backing strategically and diplomatically, maybe he could rise to the highest levels of power in CO2 and maybe run the show or whatever, and then be a little more friendly to us, or at least not be extremely hostile, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty apparent early on. That was never going to happen. Giggs was not leaving Eve. He would never give up control of his alliance. Like, it would have to be he's retiring or something. So then it just we played it by ear and developed the soft power first, and developed a lot of the interpersonal relationship with Judge. And then once that was firm, we could actually start talking about options, and that's kind of how it ended up playing out.
So it was going to be kind of a Roman style, let's put our own governor in.
Yeah, I wouldn't go so far as to say it was like a puppet governor, but yeah, I would say it was someone more amenable to our causes.
Yeah. All right, so then what happened?
Well, the summits happened, right? The summits allow you to do metagaming in a really compressed amount of time, right? You can do a whole lot. Things that would take months in diplomatic channels or take months in just nattering at each other across Eve or Discord, you can do in hours at a summit. And so even though you don't have much time together outside of the meetings, the little time you do have, you're in close proximity to each other, you're eating dinner, you're having a good time, you're drinking. It's the perfect recipe for personal relationships to develop.
Right. And we'll actually talk about the summit and is it proper to do meta business at it and that kind of stuff later on. But right now you're talking about after the summit's over, you guys go out to dinner and you guys are like kind of hanging out talking about Eve. And
well, yeah, I mean, this had been happening. You got to remember, we would talk about in-game events or in-game deals, or just start hinting at each other about possibilities, things like that, for many, many, many months, where it's like, hey, maybe someone will pass me some soft intel and I'll reciprocate something that doesn't hurt us for them to know. And you kind of feel each other out that way. So It's not like it's one dinner that does everything. That's the coup de grace, right? That's the very last end game of the whole year-long process. There's so many small things that you have to do to get there. Like, you don't develop trust with someone on something like this, because think about it from his point of view. At some point, just talking about it means he was going to get shot. So there's a great level of trust you have to build up before you can even start talking about something. Because what if we run to gigs and say, hey, judge is considering flipping? Like, he just gets shot in the face. So you have to build up a level of trust before someone's even willing to discuss that with you.
Yeah. So I guess it's like a little bit of humor. You're kind of like just throwing feelers out to see where somebody's actual beliefs are.
Well, yeah, a lot of times, or it's not even feelers. It's a little more overt. Like, if you're playing at the very, very highest level of the metagame, everybody knows everybody's metagaming all the time. Like, I never turn it off. I try to sometimes, but it's very hard to turn it off. Like, if you're constantly metagaming, that becomes habit. That becomes your personality. So any like judge, I consider someone else very high level at the metagame. Like, he understands it. He's good at it. He just was never in a position to have a lot of power over it. Like, you could tell he really likes the metagame, but CO2 with gigs running it was never going to be a major meta player because he's just completely unstable and unreliable. So the best tactic to use when talking to that kind of player is just to be honest with them and say, here's our options as we see them. Here's your options as we see them. Now reciprocate. What do you feel our options are, and what do you feel your options are?
Yeah. So part of that is, I imagine, so you're laying it out like for him. Did he agree with the assessment that you gave him?
Yeah, like, there's no point where I think we ever disagreed. There would have been, the only thing we ever seemed to disagree on was like a little bit how history played out in the Great Betrayal. Other than that, we've never disagreed on options on anything, because it's not something you can really lie about or spin. It's just paths forward, right? And that's kind of how we do all our planning, right? Path A, path B, path C. We plan for permutations, and if you just lay out the permutations of all the possible permutations, it's pretty much can only be truth. Like, you can see it for yourself if you're a metagamer.
He's not here to ask, but what do you think was the thing that was it the culmination of different things, or was there anything in particular that was shiny to him that said,
I think he was very concerned that he had invested a lot of ISK into the alliance over the years, and he was afraid that he was kind of had the sunk cost fallacy going on in his head to some degree. You could see he wanted out, but he felt too deep. He was too deep. So I think when we dangled paying full price for the keep, that really clinched it. We were already negotiating at that point. Like, if you start talking costs or options, you're already negotiating, right? So we're already in the negotiation phase. But that was the clincher. Like, when I said that, I saw his eyes, I knew we were done. Like, he wouldn't give me the official answer for a couple of days, but we were done negotiating at that point.
Man, I must say the way you're assessing the situation is so fast that you were already onto a different stage of it. Like, this is not a matter of how much. Now it's not a matter of will he, it's a matter of how much.
Yeah, there's certain things that people are going to say when they're talking to you that you know their mental state. You know where their head's at based on the words and phrases that they're using or the tone of the conversation. So, I mean, this is just, kind of corporate America 101 stuff. So once you kind of established if you're already kind of moved past the stage, they might even realize it yet. They might be thinking, oh, could say no if he doesn't say money. But no, in his head, he's already willing to do it. He's just looking for the best path for him to do so.
Yeah.
Were you handling him as a mole, or it's almost sounding like you're saying that he was a useful idiot, and I'm using that in kind of the intelligence circle terminology way, right?
No, I think he knew what he was doing. Like, he knew the consequences. We laid him out. Like, he knew it is unlikely he'll ever be in high levels of power again. Doesn't mean he can't participate in the meta at a high level. I think he could still do diplomacy and things like that. But he would never have roles to do something like this again. He knew that going in. So it's not like it's someone that you flip as a spy and then you burn them and then let the home country torture them to death. It's not like that. It's no, like, here's the option in front of you. Here's how we're going to make it easy for you to do. And we've kept our word. We paid him for the Keep Star. We enrolled him in Goonswarm when he applied. Like, we've kept our word on everything. And that's also useful for the meta, because now future people will know we keep our word.
Yeah. So one of the things I was thinking was that you would flip him and then burn him, and then it was a complete victory. But you probably would never do that, because you would discourage anybody else from flipping in the future, right?
Well, we're Lannisters. Like, if anyone knows about Goonswarm, we keep our deals and we pay our debts. Like, that's essentially how we play Eve.
Oh, it's awesome. So what happened after at the summit after that? Like when you started putting things on the table and stuff, I assume he agreed and said, did he say, let's do this, or what happened?
Yeah, it was, think of it more like 30 minutes of me speed talking, laying out all permutations and options to a group of people that were listening. I was doing 95% of the talking. Judge would nod and agree during various points of this kind of dialogue. Monologue, really. And it was more for the benefit of the people watching and for Judge to know that we had considered all the possible options. He had considered all the possible options. He did not disagree with our assessment, and that we agreed on a very small number of options would have been the path forward. Pretty much all of them with him leaving CO2. You got to remember, he was very unhappy there. Like, he felt abused. He would have these texts like GigX just privately ripping him to shreds over things that weren't his fault. And even if it was his fault, it would be pretty inappropriate to rip your lieutenant like that.
Yeah,
even in private.
Can you describe the room? Who was in there?
So it was me and there was a bunch of us. There was 12 of us there, but as far as who could actually hear, because it's a very loud restaurant that it's held in, it'd be me, a nominate, Judge, CCP Nagwal, who I'm sorry, I'm name dropping you. Please don't be mad at me. And there was another CCPer to my right. I forget his name. He told it to me, but it was loud and I barely understood at the time, so I didn't file it away. But it was a dev I had not previously met. He seems newer to CCP, like in the last couple of years, so I'm not sure what his dev name was.
So there were a couple devs there watching?
Yeah, you got to remember, they cannot participate in the meta, which is sad because that means they don't really see the meta. They might know it's there. Just because you know something exists doesn't mean you understand it. But it's disappointing because that's where the real end game of EVE has been at forever, right?
I think they see more than you think.
I agree. I think they can see a lot and infer a lot, but some of these moves are like 2, 3, 4 levels deep. And I know they're not seeing that deep because we barely do sometimes. And it's unfortunate. So I thought my intention that night was, hey, you guys are new to CCP. Let me show you what EVE's like. I felt like a guy showing off his shiny new car or something to them. Like, I wanted to show them the EVE that everyone believes in and aspires to, but you don't get to see much.
Yeah, and so they jumped at the chance, sat there quietly, I assume?
Yeah, they did. They barely spoke. They were not participating in this. They were observers of this. Think of it like, I think he probably said less than 2 or 3 sentences during this whole thing, and they were clarifying questions. Like, because he was new and they were new, they don't know a lot of the history. They don't know our motivations for why we want revenge, or those kind of things.
Now, when you say the metagame is really kind of the end game thing, it's a very small group of people really that are involved at that kind of level, and I don't just mean in Goons, I mean just across the board. So I mean it's end game for a few, but it's not end game for most people, right?
Sort of. So yes, to your main point, like, it is a very, very small number of people. I would say less than 50 people in all of EVE control the meta. Probably not even that many. Probably more like 30. And will really control. But there's a lot of ancillary players that contribute to that. So there's lots of people that play a part of the meta, just not the grand meta. But the meta has many levels, and there's lots of people that participate in lower levels. That's what's great about EVE.
Right. All right. So there you are. You laid it out. He says, yeah, I agree with that assessment. And then you give him options. What were the options?
One, we knew we wanted him to at least develop as a spy. We thought maybe using a spy deep within CO2 to know all their strategic intel would end up resulting in something, really magical, where you could set up another BTAC-R type scenario or something like that. So that was like one option, like stay in CO2 but spy, because the original plan that I had pitched him was, don't flip right away, spy for us until you get elected again. Once you get elected again, then flip. And so you have another full term. But he didn't really want to run again anyway. So that was his kind of like, well, I don't really want to run again. So that really killed that one.
Do you think that played into this at all? The not wanting to run. I mean, does he have a case of CSM-itis, and that also played into his willingness to kind of throw reputation away?
I don't think it played into the willingness to do it. It played into when he did it. I think it definitely made this happen now, like the perfect possible time when everyone's staring at a huge change in null. So everyone's got a freeze right now. So that was definitely cool. And, the 9/11 thing was really cool for us in US time zone. But I don't think it impacted whether he was going to do something or not. I think he'd made the decision that Giggs was so toxic that he was going to turn on him.
One real quick sidestep, adding him to your ticket for CSM. I mean, you put the enemy of the Goonswarm or Imperium people on your CSM ticket. Was that part of the plan?
Yeah, that was directly part of the plan originally. That's why I said this has been going on for a year.
Yeah.
So the question I have, and I think a lot of people want to know, is was the judge talking about what happened to the CO2 line members after a flip, or was that not part of the conversation?
We talked about it briefly. I remember it coming up at the dinner. He was concerned about his line members, but he also knew he kind of had this. Imagine if you're a dozen battered women in a house and you decide one of them is going to one runs and you get out. And the rest don't get out, and you feel really bad for them, but it's their choice to be battered women. That's kind of where judge's head was at.
All right. So then the execution. So what happens during the execution? Did you actually lay out this is the order of things and this is how fast you have to do it, or how'd that work out?
Yes and no. So I laid out the very first steps he should do, like the opening 2 or 3 moves, and the most important priorities to make sure he got. And then we felt he had no more than an hour. That's like the longest you ever get. But it turns out he only got 10 minutes, but he was done in 5. I don't remember like that. He was basically done before Giggs got in. They prevented him from taking a few things, but they were minor things, like some forwards.
Mm-hmm. Now, whose idea was it to put the inner workings of their alliance chat on stream?
That was all Judge. We had talked internally that we felt he might bug zap himself, but I had only put it 30% chance.
Bug zap.
But because we knew he would rage, that's Giggs. He always said crazy shit, and he always got really mad. And what people don't remember about this one is he threatened him 3 different times and spread 7 hours apart. It wasn't like he was just learning and he was really emotional. He was really emotional for a day.
So it was okay. So you thought this might be a bonus, but it was actually Judge's idea to do that. He wanted to expose the anger.
Yeah, I think Judge knew he was going to get a lot of chat porn and tears. He actually videoed all of it. I don't know if this is public knowledge, but he videoed all of it, from the whole theft, everything, all the chat channels for 8 hours after, or 6 hours after. So we can't wait to start parsing that video for all the tears we're going to see in it. We're going to have to make a montage.
Andrew Groen's going to want a copy of that.
Well, he did record all the stuff because he was prepared for what was going to be coming at him from the leadership that he had offended, because he said he had a history of abusive language and stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't just Giggs. He wanted the tears from the line members too. If you're going to do this, you might as well milk it for all the suffering you can. This is just pure suffering. Just, love it.
Yeah, Scooter McCabe in the audience there is saying, "Gonna need a montage, please."
I'm sorry. This does not sound like a partnership, right? This does not sound like 2 people that were kind of working together. This sounds like what Sergei Kislyak probably sounds like when he's talking about Donald Trump Jr. or something like that. I mean, it's just. The judge just sounds like he was a tool for somebody else's vengeance, which is, I guess really what it really was, right?
It's his vengeance though too. Remember?
Yeah.
He felt shit on. To me, this was the battered housewife finally cutting he bobbited him. He cut his dick off middle of the night type thing. That's what from his side.
And also murdered the kids as well. But I mean,
Yeah. Those kids were ugly anyway.
Okay, so we're almost finished here. What was your reaction when Giggs got banned? Was that icing on the cake for you?
Oh, yeah. I was already exploding with smug as it was. Especially, I particularly like nuking all the clones thing. To me, that one was genius. I don't think he saw that one coming. So I don't want to go into the mechanics, but we nuked everyone's clones right away in the first hours. So if you log in, all your high grade clones were gone. People lost all these clones, nice clones.
Wow, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, most people did. It was pretty funny.
So nobody could jump back in.
Well, yeah, well, they have whatever they were in physically, but that's it. They didn't have all the other stable clones.
Wow. All right, so you take out all the clones.
Yeah, then so we said, well, I walked through the list we gave Judge. It was primary your people. You got to target right away the roles of the people that can stop you. So you role strip, right? Anyone that may log in, and it turns out like that's why he didn't get much time, as a director had logged in and he went for it anyway, and that director called GigX, and that's why it only lasted like a few minutes, but it was done. I think he said he was really done with everything in 5, and so that's the speed at which you can just get wrecked in Eve. A little fast, but whatever. That's Eve.
Yeah. Near instant. People spend years building stuff up, and you can get wiped out in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and we had told him secure the key, but don't try to transfer it to us. We were worried about Wardex and things like that. So we basically just said, go ahead and just transfer it to your own alt corp that only you control, and it was a corp of 1, like it was just him, just to secure it, and we'll worry about stripping ACLs and all that after. Like, you don't want to like start a bonfire to start. You want to just transfer it and see who notices. They started talking about it. They're like, he even says he's got video of the confusion. Like they just thought it was a mistake at first, like someone screwed up and accidentally transferred it, and so it bought him more time.
As a CSM member, currently working on, currently working with CCP on structures and how that's all going. Do you like these new structure mechanics?
This is going to be hilarious. Nominate brought this exact thing up when they were first showing us the Citadels, like when they were first showing us all the features. We actually, and by we, I just mean Nominate, he brought this up to their attention at a CSM Summit, how this exact scenario could occur. And they're like, well, because we originally wanted a cooldown timer. We said anyone that transfers, it should be like a 24-hour cooldown timer or something. And he's like, no, we'd like it like this. We disagreed, but obviously we would agree now.
We would agree. That's what I'm asking. I mean, like, because this kind of works in the favor of being able to pull off something. Because in the old structure stuff, right? I mean, you could transfer sovereignty, but only to another corporation within the alliance. Same thing with stations and that sort of thing. But with these new structures, I mean, you can just, as you said, you could basically unplug the cloning service, and boom, there goes that, and transfer keep stars like they were a POCO.
Yeah, like. From our perspective, we always told CCP the truth the first time. They don't listen, doesn't mean we want to abuse it, right? So yeah, I like it.
Well, okay, so the last part of this that I wanted to get to was your reaction after all this has gone on. Like, did the plan go perfectly, or were there adjustments you had to make during all this?
It went almost perfectly. He did go early, so we weren't quite ready to Hellcamp. That's why there was a panicked reaction from us, because originally we didn't think it was going to be like a 9/11 Sean thing. It was going to be a 9/13 thing. He was going to go 2 days later originally, but he kept waiting for this window. Like, they had this Corp Titan that they'd only put in the hangar occasionally. Like, someone would take it out, use it, and then put it back, right? Well, the person put it back that night, and once he saw that Titan, he's like, well, that's the last thing I'm waiting on. That's the last big asset I can't get. So he went for it.
Oh, so he went early, and you guys were prepared, I assume, or you?
We were semi-prepared. We weren't prepared for that night, so we didn't have the right people around, so we had to scramble with alternate people.
Oh, okay.
Like, I had to start calling everyone, waking people up. Like, oh my God, like, he went for it. And I only happened to notice, like, right as I was getting into bed, I checked Discord, and I see him text. Right, he was talking to me right then. I'm like, oh God, and I jump up and run.
Yeah, so a judge keeps strange hours, I guess.
Well, he's Australian.
Right. Should we worry that he's not here on the show, or?
No, like, he's been keeping weird hours. Like, I remember at one point he stayed up like an insane long time after the heist because he sat there gunning the Keepstar like the whole next day. It was hilarious.
So how do you welcome him into Goonswarm now? What kind of, is he a folk hero of the Imperium now, or what's the reaction to bringing him in?
I think everyone's very accepting. I mean, yeah, you get somewhat folk hero status. It's kind of weird. Like, goons tend to be like, if you enemy my enemy kind of thing, and if you kill my greatest enemy, yeah, you're going to have hero status enough that you're going to be accepted.
And this was like, I don't think it can be understated by anybody who's played more than, say, a couple years, that CO2 held a special place in your guys' heart.
Yeah, like anyone that betrays us like that, like people don't understand it wasn't, we went and defended their capital, lost a bunch of stuff doing it, and then they tried to get our supercat fleet killed. Like that part was true. Like I don't know about the POS stuff. Judge said that part wasn't true. I don't even know what the POS stuff he's referring to. But they were trying to get our supers dropped with PL. They were going to co-drop us. Luckily, K-Color took a different route, and no one ever knew. We took a very secret route. So the super fleet was safe, so they can get in their BTAC-R. But flipping like that, where you actually tried to betray us and headshot us at the same time, we're never going to forgive that.
Right. And so leadership in Goonswarm, what's their reaction? How big are the celebrations, I guess?
We went straight to plaid, I guess. Like we were so smug, we almost didn't celebrate. I mean, people are clearly very happy internally, and there's a lot of chatter about it. But leadership is almost like, we talked about it for about an hour, and then we said, I go, well, what's next? And like, what's our next campaign? Because I'm like, let's move on. Like, you know, I'm smug sploding. I'll be smug sploding for months. I got to get used to containing this amount of smug. So once I'm comfortable in my own skin again, you know, we'll talk.
Yeah. Do you have any idea, like, do you have any perspective on it yet? Like how this is going to play out in 4 or 5 years? Are people going to talk about this one?
Yeah, like this is going to probably be, well, I don't want to say that. That's negative. But I hope this isn't the last greatest thing that ever happened in EVE.
Okay. I hope so too.
Well, I mean, what would you compare this to? I mean, other than the disbanding of Bob, and really, how would you compare this to that? I personally think that right there was of much larger consequence.
This is far larger than the Bob disbanding when you think about it, because the Bob disbanding, all they did is rename to Id Alliance, right? It hurt them, but it didn't stop them. This one, they disband. Their functional identity is gone. Their leader, because they're a cult of personality, is headshot and never coming back, which means they can't reform as they were, because he was the whole point of the alliance. And we get to flip, make a whole strategic region get burned down like overnight. I mean, Test did a great job. They burned it all down in days. And then we profited $100 billion on the keep. I mean, this is like the hat trick of all hat tricks.
As far as, yeah, it's a pretty complete victory. I don't see any like silver lining, reforming, especially after GigX formed the guys up and said, go find home somewhere else. Who knows if he finds a way back in some way, but what is that?
Tabs.
Yes.
Is that who's finding it?
Just dunk being dunk.
No, and
Very well.
And while this one here was much more of what I'll call a clean sweep, like you said there, in the comparing it to the Bob situation, right? I mean, that basically ended the Great War. I mean, basically when they were disbanded and the hell camping began, and I mean, it basically put them down and shattered that entire thing, which changed the face of EVE. I don't see where this is going to necessarily change the face of EVE for a long time to come.
I mean, it kind of like, there's a good point there, because obviously Bob ended a war, right? And this kind of stopped a war from happening before it ever got started. Yeah. And it wasn't that scale, I guess. So, I mean, it seemed from that perspective, yeah, this is big, right? But it's kind of different in that respect, when you say.
Yeah, this was about to be the next Great War. PL was coming in on CO2's side. So they were actually going to make this war. We'd have come in on any side that wasn't with CO2. Like our primary objective was always, since the casino war, kill CO2. That was been our goal. Like our goal wasn't take their space. Our goal has been kill CO2. Like that's been our overriding principle. And we've always been looking for ways to do it. And we knew just taking impasse wouldn't do it. Like that almost never kills an alliance. Like if you take their space, it has to be something from within or something cataclysmic where their morale is forever shattered.
How much information were you feeding press to put this story out there right away?
Right away. So there's several reporters within Goonswarm. So we were immediately feeding them the juiciest story in all of gaming, right? Basically.
Was that part of the meta, is to put pressure on CCP once GigX fell into that trap? And were you guys, because I mean, a lot of stories said, dismemberment threatened, and I just don't see how that kind of a writing wouldn't put pressure on CCP to never let that guy back into the game. Was that part of the plan, or was that just a lucky coincidence?
I think CCP had made the decision completely without regard to the media. Like, I think that one was so cut and dry. I don't think you needed to do anything on that one. So I don't. That wasn't really part of our plan. No, our plan was more. We wanted to use this to draw a lot more players into EVE, and then the sub part of that plan as well. Most of those new players coming to EVE are going to aspire to join Goons because that's the great story they read, right?
Well, just speaking on the media end of things,
This is horrendous.
Yeah, this is horrendous with one of the editors at INN. And as far as leadership in the Imperium goes, there's only one person who can give me orders about INN, and I did not speak to Mittens at all that night. All of the coverage was completely organic from what we were receiving through pings and other news sources.
So
yeah,
streams.
INN had nothing to do with it, is what you're saying.
INN
we
had
went
no
straight-
advance notice.
No, we went straight to the big media. We didn't deal with INN. Sorry, buddy.
No, that's totally the way to go.
Yeah, we went straight with we started talking to Kotaku and PC Gamer really early, making sure that we got the big stories out because we need eyeballs on this. And it hit the top of Hacker News. I think it was it the Ars Technica or the Kotaku article? One of those two started pinging everywhere. So we're going to get another one with PC Gamer when that hits, and then hopefully that draws a whole bunch of people in.
Yeah,
So-
it's a Kotaku article.
Sorry, just an interesting debate that's been coming up. Like when these kinds of stories hit the mainstream media, like PC Gamer and Kotaku and Polygon and such, is that so some people are arguing that negative, like they would call this negative press, right? Because it's got there are a bunch of negative things going on. So their assessment is that this is negative for EVE because it will make people not come to EVE rather than draw them to EVE, even though it does give it publicity, which I don't really agree with. But I mean, what do you guys think? Like, a thing like this sounds pretty horrible, right? If you're not used to it, right?
No, those are the kind of players we want.
Yeah, I disagree. Several people who know I play EVE immediately came up and tell me all about this. This sounds crazy town.
I know, right? I mean, that's what I think too. But a lot of people will.
I mean, the hand cutting off thing, that's the negative thing. If that was the one piece not in it, there'd be nothing but, EVE is the craziest game around.
No, see, there's a couple of different levels to this. People who know EVE at all, yeah, they're doing the, oh my God, that was incredible. But people who don't know EVE, who've never dealt with it, you look at a lot of the feedback and all the comments on these stories, and what people are focusing on is, oh my God, that guy screwed over all the little guys in his alliance. How could he do this? How could CCP let somebody do this in their game? And I think that, that's one of the problems with the big media, for lack of a better term, is that most of the people who report it, and there are some that this doesn't apply to, but most of the people who report on EVE don't really know EVE at all. So they're putting out a fairly facile and shallow interpretation of things to begin with.
Based on comparisons to other games,
right?
And,
exactly.
Stuff where it's like they're not really explaining to the level of kind of detail that they really need to. That says, look, these are all part of the machinations of this game that really make it into something that all those other games aren't. But the way they talk about it, yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think EVE is and always will be this sort of niche game, because it's hard for outsiders to understand that, look, this stuff does go down and it's part of this big web of things that happen in this game.
For the record, Kotaku wasn't talking about dismemberment, I believe, but we don't know. We'll have to sort out who talked about what later on, but we're not painting a broad brush that they were all talking about dismemberment.
Okay, so my question
with that, like some of the articles did.
I mean,
all right, we're going to move into kind of a media-esque thing where we can discuss this among ourselves and have Arif here as long as he wants to be here, talking about all the coverage, the implications, the ramifications of what this means for political relationships inside the game and stuff like that. Go ahead, Knight.
I just had I forgot my original question, but I have a question for Arif actually, just mostly for myself. But did you read what was your reaction to the apology which came from GigX about 24 hours after this all happened? Did you have any reaction to that?
It wasn't an apology. That's basically my reaction. And there's the thing that people keep drawing this correlation to the wizard hat thing. First of all, Mittens was never perma banned. He only ever ate a 30-day ban, and he ate that after he apologized, before he ever knew they were going to punish him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. People were making those correlations, and how would you differentiate what Mittens did back at FanFest and this? Like, for me, it makes no sense to make correlations between those two things, but people are doing that on the web.
Yeah, I mean, he basically apologized to the guy the next day when he sobered up. Gave him he transferred him like a bunch of his ISK, like all his personal ISK. He just emptied the Mittani out. Is like, sorry, man, I'm whatever. And it wasn't until days later that CSP banned him. They gave him a 30-day. So he never even got a perma. So fine, like that's all good. GigX ate a perma and IP right out of the gate. And he did it over like 7 hours, like multiple waves of threats. He even did it on in-game channels. He did it on live stream. So yeah, the punishment was going to be a bullet to his face forever. I don't know what anyone else expected.
I'm bringing in a couple more media guys.
So can I ask a question to Arif?
Yeah, please.
So Arif, with any group, there's a narrative of who is the bad guy, what are we doing, what's our direction. Now that you have effectively taken as strong enough revenge on CO2 as anyone could have hoped for, what do you think is next for Goons Imperium when you guys think about a direction or what you're after?
Oh, we already know our next step. I can't reveal right now. We already know what we're doing for like the next 6 months.
It's not me, is it?
Getting moved.
NC would probably be involved. We'll see.
No. It's you specifically, Metal.
Yeah.
He's tapped on Doc for that.
I've introduced Tiberius from EVNT and Caleb from Eve Guardian.
Well, why would Matterall need to undock? GigX didn't have to.
Well, okay, so this is like for people who don't know, who've been here for only 3 years, and that's a long time to play a video game. This is an Earthquake 8.0 or higher, because you don't just eliminate people like this in this way unless you find somebody to help you. And in both cases where this has happened in a really major way, they've found somebody on the inside who has soured on their own people enough to turn on them. But to actually orchestrate it, you have to know a lot about the mechanics, as you were listening to Arif talk about them wiping out all the clones and then taking precautions not to transfer the giant space station too quickly and all that kind of stuff. And it's just to eviscerate an enemy this profoundly is not something that happens all the time. People can reform and that sort of thing. So this is a pretty big event. And that's why it's really interesting to see people processing it. There is a lot of confusion and emotion from people not even involved.
It's the biggest thing since at least Summer Blink.
I just think it's really good for Eve. I mean, I'm super happy about it because everybody's up in arms talking about it. You can just see it. Just if you're in the media, you just see like traffic is taking up, all your chat windows are running like crazy. Like people are all excited about Eve, and I just hope that it does for Eve like what this Winter War was going to do, the Southern War, whatever you want to call it, the Blue Donut War, right? Like I hope out of this we also get some decent conflict and content for everybody.
Look, the most miraculous thing about this whole thing is brave newbies can dock at a keep star, and I don't think anyone in the game ever would have imagined that brave newbies could
The thing that kind of strikes me that while Arif was kind of laying it all out, the thing that I was thinking about was that the original, like the language coming out of Judge initially, like just after it happened, was that the first things he said, as far as I saw at least, was that yes, I'm doing this like. I really don't want to hurt the line members. I'm kind of like almost I'm doing this for them because GigX is an asshole and like CO2 deserves better and whatever. But the more I hear about it, the more it sounds like it was politics, personal revenge, and nothing else. He didn't really give a shit about CO2 line. It doesn't sound like it to me.
I think he gave a shit, but he didn't give enough of a shit to actually help them. I think that'd be the better way to describe it.
Yeah,
right.
Where he took it to. I mean, he crossed a line from him getting back at GigX and really doing significant, massive damage to CO2 to crossing over that line to where words about caring about the line member just are completely false.
Well, the remaining people were Caesar supporters, so that makes perfect sense when you're doing a regicide.
I can't imagine having a worse morning than those poor CO2 line did.
Well, they're having an okay time now. Like, so we wanted to get rid of the Keep Star really quick because we knew whoever wants to move in would want to buy it. We weren't trying to gouge on it. We're like, hey, we've annihilated our enemy far beyond. We don't need to dead zone this. We don't need to rub it in. We don't need to drive players away from the game. Like hell camping CO2 for 20 days and making the asset safety, all that's going to do is make people quit. That's not our intention. We would rather those players go on into other null alliances, even if they hold a grudge against us, right? Every story needs a villain, and I'm happy to be that guy, and Goons are happy to be those people. But we don't want to like reduce the head count in ETH. That would be bad. So they're going to be able to get their stuff out now. I mean, Tesla's got their little offer to evac their stuff.
Was it always going to go to test, or did you have other options?
It was pretty much always going to go to test. They asked us really early on. We didn't shop it around. Test came in right away and said, hey, would you be interested in selling it? I'm like, of course. I'm always looking to profit.
Well, now, a lot of those structures were handed over to test initially, right? The forts and Astro.
Yeah, like the little outline stuff, that we didn't care about. Like, our goal was not to seize assets or anything like that. Our goal was to kill CO2.
Now, when did Test know about this? Last night, Sapporo and ProGod said they didn't know until it, actually started happening.
Most Goons didn't know. Like, so Test didn't know until it was over. Most Goons didn't know till it was over. I started broadcasting, but until the final broadcast that says he's flipped and everything, that was when everyone realized and it hit Reddit. So no one knew outside of maybe a dozen people in Goons, and half of those found out in Cancun because they happened to be with us, and I was talking about it and briefing people during it because it was happening over Discord on my phone. So I would be up by the pool. I'd hear my phone go off. Thank God it was waterproof. Check my phone. See the judge is planning, and we'd go over the plans again, or we'd go over some detail or whatever, like checklist priority and all that. And judge did most of the work there. He had his own checklist and all that. And I would go back, and Mittens would be in the jacuzzi or nominate, and I'd go back and brief them. And there was a couple other directors there that weren't like really high level people, and they would overhear. And we finally just said, "Fuck it, we're tired of like having to sneak away. We're just going to brief you real quick."
Sorry, let me make this clear. You guys were vacationing together in Mexico when this was going down?
Yeah. Well, when we were about to go down, like we got back on Sunday and it went down like Monday night or whatever.
Wow. So Cancun?
Yeah. We were on an island not in Cancun. We were on an island near Cancun, and we were chilling at this villa. And it was a lot of our senior leadership. And it was also the senior leadership that needed the help on this. So if he'd went one day earlier, this would not have went well.
Oh, interesting. All right. So the thing about CSM and planning it there, I think that's been talked about. It's one of the favorites that people have said. Even ex-CSM members have said like they're kind of not okay with the CSM, which is supposed to be really above the game, not to be used as a meta platform. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Those people are stupid.
I agree.
No fucking sense.
All right.
Like the argument that I've seen coming out so far is like, oh no, they're going to be holding themselves above the meta. They're going to hold themselves as shining lights of players, and they can't be getting involved. But then again, at the same time, telling people even though you're part of a focus group, essentially that's all the CSM is, part of a consumer focus group to do the game. Why would that stop people from playing the game? Like, if you did that, then what is the point in actually being on the CSM if they're going to turn around and say you can't play the game for the entire year?
Let me explain how shitty the CSM to people. You fly there, you're basically there for a week. You're giving up your weekend before and after, by the way, for travel. You're there like Monday through Friday or Saturday. You sit in an office building at CCP, and the only good thing is their drinks. I love those fizzy drinks, goddamn. But other than that, the food in Iceland sucks. You end up having to go to like high-end restaurants to have a decent meal. So you end up probably $500 to $1,000 out of pocket for a week trip in Iceland, even though they're picking up hotel and airfare. And you don't get out of the city unless you get a stayover day, and you might slip out for one day on your own dime, by the way. So you're doing all this for free, and it just sucks. So if I can't at least metagame at night or whatever, what is the point of that?
And keep in mind, it's one conference room. It's small. You barely fit in it. It's not particularly well ventilated. You're in there for hours and hours and hours, and with very few breaks. It's tiring.
Yeah, sweaty nerds. Yeah,
Isn't the
sweaty nerd
definition
hotbox
of
torture?
Isn't the definition of the CSM players that they are meta players?
No,
But
I wish that were true.
To some extent.
and then on top of that, you go and you do all this thing. Even if all these people together met at any other event, whether it be FanFest or a player meet or something like that, I'm pretty sure the same thing could have been done. So just because it happened to be at CSM with people that are very keyed into the game made no fucking difference.
Some of the CSM are oblivious. They're not metagaming. They don't even see the metagame. They're, I think, as Steve would self-describe, a little naive, and they like it that way. And we let them do their thing, and we don't metagame them.
So, okay, so you outright reject that the CSM was an appropriate place to plot some of this.
Yeah, if it wasn't clear when I called them stupid, yes, I reject that problem.
Right. All right.
Is there anybody here who kind of thinks differently? I mean, because this is a narrative that's kind of going around out there in terms of some people who are maybe they don't really understand that just because you're a CSM member that were elected by people, that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good person, that you are something that is held to a higher standard. They're basically held to the same standard that all other players are as it comes to gameplay. They just cannot use insider information with which to, benefit.
Right, and the narrative that the people who are saying, oh, you can't do this to the CSM, the narrative they're pushing is based on the whole, well, these are the guys who voted for you to go to the CSM, but it's not like the people in CO2 voted for the judge to go there and work for CO2 over the rest of nullsec. That's just not going to happen on the CSM, realistically speaking. So he would have been representing the interests of general categories of players, like people in nullsec, which, well, he still is, isn't he?
But isn't that the problem, that was kind of what GigX was expecting?
Well, GigX is an idiot.
Well, what do you mean that's what he was expecting? Because
I do not think.
Because let's be honest here. When you get your alliance behind a guy to send to the CSM, right? I mean, everybody out there has the expectation that, look, not that guy is going to work on our behalf, but
he said that when you were there.
He's one of us, kind of a thing. Now, I'm just asking if that's what you mean, that you think that GigX thinks that he was literally going to do stuff for CO2, as opposed to he's one of us and it's.
He was mad at the judge for not leaking to him and claiming that every other member of the CSM was leaking to their leaders. He said that when you were there.
I think that's exaggerating it. Mad, I think, is overstating it. He asked a couple times. He didn't get anything. He thought perhaps other people were, but I didn't see anger.
That's not the way Gigs said that was that, oh, look, it's obvious that everybody else who has a CSM active now gets intel. We weren't getting any intel. That was a given fact to him, the way he said that.
Well, and even in the judge's initial statement out there that went out on Reddit, right? His complaint related to the CSM there was not that GigX was trying to get dank leaks out of him. It was that GigX was, beating up on him as a surrogate of CCP.
That's also true, yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't seem to me that well, anybody here believes this kind of narrative that the CSM should not engage. CSM members even at the summit should not engage in the meta. But it is out there, and and there are former CSM members who I think are disappointed in this. But I think it's more about the idea that the CSM has a really hard time as it is, not having black eyes all the time, and that this in a way doesn't really help that for the average player out there who maybe doesn't completely understand what the whole purpose or the value is.
That's kind of dumb though, because obviously, you can be a valuable, fully functioning CSM member and still metagame. They're not mutually exclusive. It's got nothing to do with each other. I don't see why it's a problem at all. I don't see why anybody have that discussion at all. Like, these two people happen to be at the same place for reasons, right? For CSM reasons, but that doesn't mean they're any better or worse at being CSM. Like, it makes no difference.
Right. And this stuff happens all the time. I mean, and it's kind of one of the things that people have brought up as a negative of player meets is that this kind of cuts both ways. Is that, at player meetups like Vegas or FanFest or any of these things where the actual humans behind the keyboard get together, and they may be manipulating things in a way that hurts somebody. There's also complaints that they're manipulating things in a way where because they become like real life buddies and have had a beer with somebody, that actual conflict doesn't take place because of that.
Well, one of the other
Brad saying that he didn't want to shoot Laz in his fuzzy beard anymore.
Well, actually, that goes the other way too, right? So I think that's one of the wonders about player meetups, and one of the great things about them is that you meet people, you talk, and things change, right? And they have an effect in the game, and it's both. Like, sometimes it'll stop wars, but other times it will create content, like it will create alliances and events that otherwise would not have happened. I think that's marvelous. I think that's fucking fantastic. It's one of the best things about EVE players meeting other EVE players, right?
Keep in mind too that you're sitting in these sessions at CSM and you're trying to get CCP to share details with you and information with you. And then you're going off to dinner, and in addition to the CSM there are CCP guys sitting next to you. If you have a conversation about EVE in some way, A, the metagame is going to sneak in, and B, you're trying to engage the CCP guys to also talk about EVE with you because they'll let additional information slip out. You learn things from them that didn't come out in the color of the meeting, but it came out in a different context, possibly after a nice meal and 2 or 3 glasses of something. So that's part of the CSM's job. Thanks.
And it's one of the cleanest CSMs we've had in a long time. So I think it's funny that someone's trying to find flaw in it.
Caleb, that just means they're much better at not showing it, right?
Of course.
Well, I don't have to leak. I mean, the best thing about sending me is I was the guy that everyone would need to leak to before. So if we can get leaks and I couldn't, then sending me is the next best thing.
So what about the way that it cuts between FCs and diplomats? Because it seemed to me that you have an old school brawler FC that doesn't really care about all the paper pushing, as they call it, totally getting undone and destroyed by somebody who is a paper pusher. Like, that relationship between a diplomat and an FC, has that changed because of this?
No, I think it'll just make people start questioning whether they need to give diplomats roles anymore.
Never give a Diplo roles.
I guess then it doesn't matter if he was a diplomat or not. That was just an added honorary.
Yeah, I think the diplomatic thing, I think he probably helped Giggs for years. Like, Judge seemed to honestly want to help his alliance for as long as I've known him at the summits anyway. So I think Giggs was just being Giggs.
So who made this happen? Was it really a combination of 2 different interests aligning, or did you actually play the Judge and destroy CO2?
I think the person that gets the most credit for this is Giggs, by being a total douchebag. But other than that, I see it as kind of mutual. Like, I for this to work, I have to have a willing partner, right? I have to have a chick that's willing to go home with you at the end of the night. Doesn't mean that she planned on that. It just means, she's willing to hike that mini skirt up at some point. And so it takes 2 partners here.
Find your way out of that analogy, please.
It's a great analogy.
Well, here, let me ask you this. Do you think Judge eventually does this in the absence of you, licking behind his ear?
No, probably not. No. Like, that's why I think it took both. Like, I think it took having a place to go, being able to cash out effectively, knowing you're going to have a fleet on the undock to enact your revenge. Like, if you just pop on your own, it's not near as severe, and you're basically have nowhere to go, blah, 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 and you wouldn't cash out half as much as you did. So, yeah, I think it took both. So
you offered him the parachute that enticed him to take the action he wanted to take anyway.
Well, it's not just the parachute, it's the money, it's the recognition, it's the media backing. Like, there's lots of ways this story can be spun, right?
Yeah, but so isn't that reminiscent of I Want ISK offering all those mercenaries money to do what they wanted to do anyway and invade Imperium?
They're dead too.
I mean, I think what we're trying to get at was this: did this idea like kind of form in his head before? Was it already there, and he just made it possible, or was the idea of it all provided to him as well, and he was just merely disgruntled about his situation?
I think I definitely sowed the seed of the idea. Like when I first started talking to him, he was not disloyal in any way.
I think that everybody who's in a position of responsibility has to deal with the bullshit of running alliances and corps and Eve. In the back of their head, there's always the, what the fuck if I bailed out? What would happen? Would life be greener on the other side? I think everyone who has to deal with the bullshit of managing Eve players has that in the back of their mind somewhere. Like, is that my path?
And we've also got to remember, like, the time span for that sort of thing to happen is very, very small in Eve. Like in sometimes it takes years and years and years for that sort of stuff to happen. But in Eve, people's tolerances are a lot lower, so it is easier to like latch onto an idea and make them foster ideas and make them do things these ways because it's part of the game.
I've never even considered doing it, so I don't think it's true if you're at high levels. I think it's just how tribal you are, and do you have a strong identity with the tribe you're with or not?
There you go.
Well, it depends on how much you get shit onto, right? And like everybody's going to, anybody that does anything serious in Eve is going to get shit on someday for even from the line level, getting shit on for having the wrong fit or whatever, and from like diplomacy and leadership level, you're going to get shit on a lot harder, right? But at some point, everybody's going to get shit on, and it's a matter of how much shit can you take? Is it justified? And what are you going to do about it? Like, and that's very much a personality thing, isn't it?
I don't get shit on. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah,
I'm the one who knocks.
Arif doesn't really. I mean, he's not going to be responsive to money, and he's not going to be responsive to disrespect because he won't put himself in the position to be disrespected in the first place, which is one of the things that maybe allowed the situation to get worse over time. If you're going to take abuse over and over and over again, like CO2's excuse against the Imperium, they said, we've taken this abuse for years, and now we're finally out of here at a pivotal moment when we can save our space. It just seems to ring like, why didn't you get out sooner? Or why did you even let yourself get disrespected in the first place?
Oh, man, CO2, we had this. CO2 is by far the worst ally we had from a stability and understanding what actually happened and not drug, fueled, like, fantasies. Bastion does kind of suck though, I'm just saying. But CO2 was always raging out, like just for random stuff, like, oh, we haven't been given enough moons, or oh, we took all these moons back that belonged to an ally from the hostiles, but they sucked. They couldn't really hold them, so we want to keep them. Like crap like that all the time. Like they were always entitled, they were always retarded. We had to report to them multiple times. They had a director robbing them blind, and that's where most of their money was going. He was just robbing them, and he was giving them like $100 billion a month and saying, "Oh, that's all we've made." And they were too stupid to even know that that wasn't true. Like that's the kind of alliance they were.
I mean, I think like a lot can be said about Gig's the way he kind of went into fights that nobody in their right mind should have taken, but a lot of people, and myself included, actually think that there was quite a bit of skill, like in CO2, just in their technical ability to fight. I think they were pretty good, and a lot of that comes from the experience of the exposure to actual fighting. I don't think that can be just denied. Like CO2 were pretty good at playing the game of actual Eve, right?
I mean, certainly with the tribute war that happened not long after that, it was 3 or 4 months of a properly hard slog to go in and take that space. And I personally, from a line member point of view, just pressing F1 button, shooting at these guys, I developed a lot of respect for the CO2 line members because they are really tenacious, and certainly one of the more tenacious alliances. And it's quite rare for alliances this now to be that tenacious. Most wars fizzle out in a few weeks, but these guys were fighting consistently for 3 months.
That's why when people bring up the stability or whatever of the alliance and GigX being this, that, or the other thing, and it's like, I'm sorry, that mentality that made them pound for pound one of the better fighting alliances in all of Eve, that came from the top. And maybe that was also partially the instability. Yes, maybe they took fights that they shouldn't have and things like that. You can say it was because GigX was crazy or he had a big set of balls. But I mean, that's where all that came from. They weren't just like, oh, geez, we're just elite fighters out here, because they took fights.
Well,
But do you necessarily want that as at your top level, or do you want that yoked to the top level, where you've got like a sane leader who's got the raving mad dog cult figure as his left hand to, let slip off the leash sometimes?
Well, let's we can talk about that a bit later. I wanted to switch gears a little bit. Let me just say this last thing about that. You can be a really strong entity, but if you have a soft underbelly, you have a weakness, and that can be exposed if found. So there's all kinds of models, and it does this next question does kind of play into that, and that is, isn't it kind of sad to see the brawler type leader? And I would say that Grath can be this way, an intimidating voice, a demanding, personality, as can Vince Draken, as was GigX. Isn't that model, doesn't that come from the past? And was it defeated with, the new future of saboteurs, the smarter game players?
It's been dead for a while. Like, we went through this with DBRB. DBRB was our gigs, right? Super aggressive, kind of raised in the old style, like we're going to 2 fleets enter, 1 fleet leave brawl type mindset. It didn't transition to the new meta. Like, the new meta, military is very important, but it's kind of the 3 M's, right? You got military, morale, and they had those two. Like, CO2, you could never really defeat them because of those two, but the problem is going to be they ignored all of the money game. They ignored all of the diplomacy game, right? The other M. They ignored all of the logistic game, like the hardcore, like setting up empire economy type game. So they were broke, which is why he didn't get more, because they had basically burned all of their risk recently, and they didn't have a lot of money coming in. But
he did skill extract 4 Titan pilots to pay for SRP for his people. So he was very much like a tribal leader, where he was the greatest warrior, but also gave everything he could to his people.
I've also seen him give away, when they lost a bunch of super caps, I saw him give away his personal ones to people so they could keep going.
Yeah, and like, how long would that have continued before he was broke too? Not too long.
But that's the question: is this, like, it seems to me it's almost like a layer of civilization that is overcome by the new civilization, the new meta, I guess, which is fascinating if you think about it. Moving from a tribal society to a society to, I don't know,
agricultural.
It's more like we're functioning more as concentric tribal society. Like, still, like, we just have tribes within tribes, really.
Yeah. Tiberius, did you have some on this?
Yeah, I think we definitely are seeing the last of probably one of the antagonist style leaders. If we're taking a real world analogy, effectively the North Korea of Eve has just exploded, and I'm kind of sad about that. And now I'm kind of looking forward to an Eve that doesn't have a big, fist to table banging style leader that will flip out at a flip of a hat and quite happy to push the nuke button when he wants to. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward.
That is the backside of all of this, isn't it? I mean, you can say whatever you want about gigs, about CO2, but they did bring a lot of content to EVE players. And that means a lot of players too.
Mm-hmm. What about the personal aspects here? And I'm not talking about the threats and that kind of stuff, but just the amount of effort that one person can put into the game to cultivate over a period of years his people. And to have that, completely taken away in 5 minutes, as you said.
That's EVE, man. Like, that's what makes EVE great. Like, there's so many paths to victory. You can have a military victory. You can have an economic victory. You can have a spycraft victory, or you can just have a diplomatic victory. And in this case, there's a little of 2 of them.
Isn't it kind of one of the very central qualities of EVE, the aspect of loss taken from a small level, like ships? You can lose your ship, so therefore it has value. It means something to you. Well, the same thing can be said for a massive organization like this. It has value. It means something, and you show up for stupid hour CTAs and shit, and put in time and work because it means something. And the only way it means something is because it affects people, and you can lose it. right?
So, yeah, like think of it this way. The way I look at it is this. I and Judge just enact a revenge on CO2 that those players that happen to will be thinking about at some point, many times the rest of their life. And every time they think about this event, it's going to hurt a little bit and they will suffer. So I'll be letting those people suffer for the rest of their lives at the memory of me.
So what you're saying, though, Naiden, is don't form an alliance you can't afford to lose.
Yeah,
I'm saying
wait a second. Let's be clear. He didn't lose this. They lost all their stuff and they lost their space. And that's happened to many other people in the game. That's happened to many other people in the game, and they sometimes come back. Mainly they fail. But what killed this is the GigX's actions led to him being banned from the game. And because it's so around him, that's why it went down. It's Gig's actions led to this completely falling apart. Because CO2, I have no doubt, could have rebuilt themselves somewhere else if Gig was still around. So let's be clear. This wasn't like magically taken away from him. He took actions that led to this as well as...
Or if they had a number two. If they had a good number two, they could have rebuilt.
Right, but you can say that he didn't lose this; it was taken from him. But when you undock in lowsec and somebody blows up your ship, you didn't lose it; it was taken from you.
Okay, let's move on.
But people have lost everything in this game multiple times and fought back from it. Whole regions, everything. Their alliance disbanded. It's happened, and so we have to separate that happening and coming back from it from a leader who is the alliance, who is the coalition, getting banned from the game. And that was his actions that did it. No one No one forced him to do that. And we have to draw that clarity, because people get caught up in somehow someone reached up into GigX's head and made him say those words and type those things.
No. But to go back to what Nitin was saying before about, kind of like the level of value and the level, what you put into something, and therefore you do understand that there are human beings behind a keyboard and that they make mistakes sometimes, because there are some serious, strong emotional ties to this game. Not saying that you make the right decisions in those moments. I think, a lot of us have, had those failures in the past, right? But it's not unexpected for human beings to react in that way in that moment sometimes.
All right.
At the same time, Dirk, look at what CCP said about player retention numbers. According to their metrics, the way that you retain players is you get them involved with other people. They're more likely to be retained if they get ganked. So this is...
No. If they get shot at, it's different.
Sure, but... Either way, this actually goes back to what Arif was saying. For years, these people are going to be thinking about this. And sure, Arif was phrasing it in terms of the suffering he has given them and allowed them to experience. But at the same time, they're going to swear revenge. And a fair number of them are going to stay with it just to get back at us.
Right. As a final note on this, I think also there's a sense of martyrdom for GigX. He can walk away from the game knowing that he did all the stuff that he did, and that when he left, his guys really, really were emotional about it. He had the impact with thousands of people all over the game, people not even in his alliance. So he kind of goes down in history too. So yes, you've cemented a pain in for all eternity, but there's also a sense of martyrdom for that warrior king that of yesteryears, which I think is kind of interesting too. All right, so let's say what's going on with politics in that area, because what does this mean politically for the future of that area?
Well, there'll be consolidation for some period of time while they put down all their infrastructure. Because Impasse is an amazing region. It's probably, I would consider it maybe third, fourth, fifth best at lowest in EVE right now, depending how the moon shake out, but it'll get a little bit worse. But it's a great region right now because of its defensibility, its internal jump ranges, and the way the capital's laid out. But it was going to start the next war. Everyone was already picking sides. It was going to be a great brawl, probably for months. That won't happen, so that kind of sucks. But this is far more satisfying, at least for our side. So now you're probably going to see everyone retreat to their corners to some extent. I'm kind of wondering if the Pravi, bash is still going to happen. Because this has been so cathartic for us, we might just sit back here. I don't know what we're going to do. We do know what we're going to do, and it's not Pravi. So we'll see. Originally, it was going to be Pravi dogpiled around the patch time to get all their sweet stations when they change, but we don't know when that's going to be. So I think everyone will just retreat for now.
Are you going to flip Gen next?
Oh, I don't think there was enough time to flip Jin. There's only one more summit because he's not running again.
Who were the soft targets you were talking about?
It was Jin and Judge.
Of course it was Jin.
Everybody seemed to know that, but me, I didn't think so. But anyway,
Jesus.
Just when you know the people that kind of run around with each other and stuff like that. I mean,
no, we didn't hang out with Jin and Judge very much at all, actually. But especially Jin. Jin would run with the younger crowd for the most part.
No. Tiberius, what did you say was just news that Vanguard is breaking up? Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't confirmed it yet. I haven't been able to find it, but apparently the Vanguard Coalition has now officially said it's finished. It's over. And I think it was. Let me see if I can't find it. It caught me kind of off guard, so I haven't got my note here. Here it is. Yes, so announced today by Lindsay's Triumvirate, the Vanguard Coalition will officially disband as the only member was left was Stellar Nova. Stellar Nova will be evacuating its assets out of Tri space and will be going to live somewhere else. So hasta la vista, baby. Looks like Tri is there by itself now.
What's that mean for Brave?
I was going to ask, what's it mean for Brave?
Probably means there's going to be fighting. I don't know. I mean, we still haven't officially been unleashed into impasse. It's a huge amount of systems that Brave has solve over now. We're realistically not that big to hold on to all this space. We've been fighting Red and Stainwagon for months and months. So there's a lot going on. Who the fuck knows? The moons are all going to get juggled. How is refineries going to work? How are we going to fund Alliance SRP? I could go on. There's a million questions, no answers, and the only way we find out is like logging in.
We have all the answers.
The Oracle era?
Yes, if they want to share, I'm happy to listen. I am
You'll have to watch what we
to
do
everyone
after
else.
that.
And we will be
That's
watching.
a lot of answers. You'd be stunned.
This is something I didn't want to bring up, but I am going to bring it up. It was the one question I had in my pocket, and that is, how much did Matani have to do with it, really?
Nothing, really.
Will that narrative change 3 years from now, or?
Yeah, no, he didn't even talk to Judge. We tried to set up a meeting where he would talk to Judge, and they tried to get together, but Judge got sick or whatever, so they never spoke. It was just me.
So all he did was rub his belly.
Yeah, like he'd been off doing other stuff, and I'd been keeping him apprised of the situation. He was one of the people that was actually advocating a much more cautious path.
Now, Dunk, specific to Brave, have you checked what roles Yukiko has, and have you forbid him from having deep conversations with Arif at any of these events?
Well, Brave's history is a little different than CO2, so it'd pretty much be par for the course. So I don't know if people remember when we were formed for about, 3 or 4 months, our second in command took everything that Brave had owned at the time. So it's happened before. It will probably happen again. So we're having a good time now. So that's what you guys do.
Coup every other month for a while there.
Yeah, I was just about to say, what coup are we up to now?
Yukiko, we were just saying that you should not be influenced by Arif and destroy Brave newbies if you can help it.
Yeah, I heard that. I'm in chat.
Category.
All right.
Well, I think the history is just the coup stuff. When Lichten was the leader, his management style was quite different, let's say that. And that's when a lot of the worst drama was happening that wasn't externally inflicted on us. After Lichten left and transferred to Nancy, things changed as far as leadership. It didn't stop other people from inflicting pain and suffering on us. But the coup stuff is not as much of what's going on now with Brave as it was.
Also, we learned a lot from that.
So real quick, what the assessment from you other guys, Arif told us his. What do you think is going to happen in that region? Do you guys have any insight? Okay.
You mean an impasse?
Yeah, impasse.
I mean, we will see. Currently, it's just intercessing all the things, but I'm pretty sure someone will want to take some of that space. Looking forward to fights sooner or later.
Just had a clue they'd take it for themselves.
Yeah, but currently they don't. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting for this to break up.
You were to hope they don't wake up.
Well, maybe they will after the show. Okay, so I'm going back again because so Arif, you were working as an agent for the Imperium. You know the Imperium's goals; they're your goals, and so this how long was it? 2 years? A year and a half?
About a little over a year, yeah.
Of working on finding a way to undermine CO2 finally paid off. You were able to deal a significant blow to them that ended up actually with them destroying themselves. What's next for you?
Probably take a little step back, let all the media play out, focus just on maybe go back to the family for the holidays. Because when my wife read the, what was it? It was a Kotaku article, the first one that had our interviews, Judge and I's interviews in it. They used a sound bite from me where I basically said, I fell in love with CSM again. And she looked at me, she goes, "You're running again?" And because we'd already talked like I was going to stop.
Oh.
Arif, if I open up to the meta, what about it? Next summit, you and me?
That's your Kiku is from CSM.
Well, we did talk a lot about gay sex.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There we go.
I mean, who doesn't?
I would, yeah, right. I mean, it's like Dirk and I do it all the time. All right. So are you saying you're going to run next year? Or you don't know, or it's up in the air?
I'm probably going to run. It's going to come down to what a nominate does. Like if a nominate has the luck, because we were both going to step down originally, and now we're both reconsidering. So we'll see.
Because of this?
Because of this, and because of some other things that we saw. But yeah.
Do you like the direction the game is going in now, or? Or tell me what the things that you saw, the other things you saw.
I saw some things internally at CCP I hadn't seen before that have me a little concerned. So I may want to run one more time.
Oh, out of concern for the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
About what's next for the Imperium as far as targets, because the I guess the online gambling casinos were killed by CCP, and now you've killed one of the two traitors. Is FCON, should they be worrying?
FCON were just cowards, a little bit different.
But you guys say fuck FCON all the time.
Yeah,
but we said that before they left too.
Like it's unlikely we'll ever help them, but they're just like little baby back bitch cowards. So you're adorable.
I mean, I'm sure Dirk remembers. We said fuck FCON back in TNT.
That was just a saying.
Maybe that's why they left. I don't know.
No, they were pretty much just always cowards. Why do you think they wanted Branch? They wanted to hide the most.
Just do me a favor, send like a whole bunch, like 150 dreads back up north, and try to dread bond something again. Thanks, great, nice one, cheers.
What is that power balance?
So can we talk?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, the important stuff is the moon mining and the refineries and T2 production and the T2 markets and ships and all that stuff. Like that's going to affect the game tremendously. So, thoughts on? I mean,
you're not sitting on trillions of moon goo and trillions of salvage. What's wrong with you?
I can officially say for Brave, we are not sitting on trillions of any.
Wow, don't share this intel. Like we have all the things prepared, of course.
Just remember, Dunk, if you don't have it to take, they can't take it from you.
And we've been pre-buying PI. We have everything ready. We're locked and loaded.
No, I have no doubt that some people are prepared, but I think the impact on the game is going to be dramatic, and the marketplace and what's valuable.
But it'll take forever.
Let's talk a little bit about market.
So you don't think there's going to be a...
This is very important, and we have Arif here. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say we're changing course a little bit. We're going to talk about the markets in the future for the next few minutes, and then we'll call it.
Well, if you watched yesterday, some of the new rigs hit CC, the test server. So you were able to see the inputs as far as what they're going to take. Now, this could be another CCP troll, but they look pretty legit. They look like they're well thought out. And there's still more rigs coming, so there's going to be even more inputs later for other types. And it's really good. They tended to use the stuff that was cheaper anyway, so it won't matter. Stuff that's really stockpiled. But yeah, there's going to be some initial speculation. It's already happened. I personally jumped like 10 different markets yesterday, probably 300-400%. But there'll be more spec waves. There'll be some crashes before the patch and more spec waves, and then we'll go into the patch. But I think for the most part, the large players probably have some decent stockpiles. and not just I don't mean just alliances. I mean personal as well.
Some of us actually thought we had a month or two more to actually start planning and buying, but then you CSM guys fucked us over a little bit.
How do we fuck you over? By telling them to release?
By getting it out earlier. It's great, but I thought
we told them. We said, because when they told us it was October, the first feedback all of us said is you need to tell people right now, because this was like mid-August,
Yes.
late August.
Right now, like really, basically in that week, if possible.
Yeah, so we wanted to give people as much time as they could to pre-buy.
You think Vegas is what, like 20 days maybe? Yeah, something like that. I think 20 days. You think there'll be any, and I don't mean violence, I just mean, what do you think has the complexion of Vegas changed in any way because of this event that just went down?
Of course, everyone's going to have read this story and wants to be a little metagamer themselves, going to try to emulate Arif and try to flip somebody in Vegas. It'll be hilarious.
Yeah, there was, before this all went down, before the whole Legacy Coalition fracturing, there was a Discord just for the Legacy Coalition to have dinner in Vegas, and the leader of it was the judge. And so people have sent money in to help pay for the reservation. There's Legacy swag that the CO2 people bought and paid for. It's going to be dramatic at what happens at that dinner of the Legacy Coalition after all this is.
INN needs to send a representative to that dinner.
Well, if it still happens, it's still going to happen since Legacy doesn't.
Well, the Legacy dinner is the same night.
To the non-dinner.
Yeah, there's the Legacy dinner is the same night as the Goon or Imperium dinner. So, which dinner will the judge attend?
Probably the one where he doesn't need bodyguards.
Judge is going to be the guy there wearing the Arif mask.
I think he'll be fine. I mean, there's going to be so many people, and most everyone remembers it's just a game.
Yeah, so you don't think that
He
those
can hide
threats
easily. Just introduce himself as Zenaria.
Yeah, he'd have to grow his armpit hair out way out.
So basically, you're saying there really isn't anything to worry about with all the stuff that people were worried about with the, real world threats and stuff.
I mean, time makes people cool down a little bit. It'll have been 2 months or something by the time Vegas rolls around, whatever.
Well, and it's literally, it's in 20 days. But like I said, there were these things planned. There were these things that Judge was a part of organizing. Number one, Judge is somebody who, people have bought beers for in the past because, he was a CSM Glammy and all that stuff. But I think it will be a little awkward this year. I'm not saying that in any way anybody should do anything that's out of line, right? I mean, people should know that is not tolerated.
We will stop it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but it is likely to be awkward.
I mean, I won't stop it, but Dirk will, because I'll be pushing him in front of me.
I think. Number one, it's just, that kind of shit's just not tolerated at these things. But no, I think it will be awkward for some of those people, who maybe did, like you said, paid money into something or whatever.
Yeah, all right.
I mean, there's going to be people that are upset. I mean, these are thousands of people that had years of their lives invested in something. There might be people that are a little upset and want to say something, but as long as it's all cool, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? If you go to Vegas and you ask sore about it, and you see the judge there, just go up there and say, "Hey, man, you owe me a beer because of what you did," and just see if he gets you to buy one.
He probably would.
I should say also, after talking with GigX last night, he was we're trying to get him on the show. He had to work, unfortunately, but he, of course, is going to take a break and that sort of stuff. But he did say that he was mad only for his guys, and that if he did see the judge, he would say, one thing is that he would say he would buy him a beer, and the other thing would be like, why did you do it? He doesn't understand why it was done.
Well, I for one, I'm happy. That he said that would be the way he would handle it.
Oh, that was awful.
Dealing with those jokes.
That was damn.
Hands down, it's an easy thing to say right now.
No, let's stop. No, we can stop this right now.
Last word on that, Arif.
Just cut this off there.
Oh.
Judge is part of us now, so complete, utter, crushing, total victory. Mic drop.
Good job.
All right. All right, and that will pretty much be the way we end the show. Thanks for this hour and a half of insight, Arif, and thanks to the media guys that showed up from all over the spectrum. This was an amazing, huge, unique event, and it's good that we got some insight on it as it was happening, and now a wrap up to kind of feel, what the backstory was and how that turned out. Thanks, everybody. If you have any last comments you want to make? Anybody in here?
Yeah, just one. The DPRK news service Twitter at DPRK_news just said the Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un's Grand Betrayal resulting in the greatest heist of EVE Online history was just tweeted out.
Oh,
my
sweet.
God. DPRK
This is
news
awesome.
service. Nice. We've
I
won.
thought that was like
It's all over. Quit Eve now.
Shout out to Rick Javix for his wonderful Bastion mugs and stuff on redbubble.com.
Oh, real quick, didn't he quit CZ because you joined the Imperium Knighten? How's it feel to be part of the Imperium?
Yeah, it feels great. I don't think my knees can bend anymore to my new overlords.
I did notice Dirk introduced you earlier as Knighten from CZ/INN.
No, that's like I had my consultant Jack McGutt come up with a new name for the new sort of Imperial site, which will be CZN.
Well, Crossing Zebras did start as a corporation inside of the
Goonswarm.
Bastion.
The Bastion. Oh, sorry. Yeah. That's
The
correct.
Bastion.
That is correct.
So it's back where it belongs?
Well, it started in Gentleman's Agreement, which is half of the Bastion. So, yeah.
Zebra Corp. Not Crossing Zebras didn't start there. I mean, Crossing Zebras was
Just a
thing, right?
name. Yeah.
The Zebra part came from
Players from that corp.
yeah. Haven't been in Zebra.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, great. All right. Anybody else have anything? We'll close up. Not. Thanks, audience. Appreciate all the enthusiasm. Have a ton of viewers. Arif always gets big numbers for us. That's why we keep inviting him back.
Big time.
No, that's totally not the reason. Honest.
No, that's the only reason we invite him back. Huge
damn it.
numbers. No, actually, the insight, I don't think you can get insight like that anywhere else in this game right now. So it's a unique figure, unique time, unique events. All right.
So
Thanks, everyone.
There's only one thing I want to finish on. If you too want to plot your next coup, make sure you check out the upcoming EVE meets in the next week or so. There's one in San Diego on the 21st of September. There is one in Poland on the 22nd of September at a place that I'm never, ever going to pronounce ever. There's one on the 23rd of September in Brisbane, and there is one in Adelaide as well on the 23rd of September. So make sure you go check those out so you can see if you can't rip off your own alliance by backstabbing them too.
All right. And hi, Nasag. Thanks for watching. It's our friend from France. Hope you're well. All right, guys. Thanks for coming. That is all for us. We will see you next week on Talking in Stations.